30 hours of travel, foreign languages, 9-hour difference in time zone. I am jet lagged. Was it a mistake to play poker? Stick around and see. Hi guys, welcome to another session of Exceptional Poker video. I'm bringing this episode to you from Germany, where I just landed a few hours ago. I'm in Europe for 10 days on business. A little bit of trouble getting here. Should have taken about 18 hours of travel time total, including layovers. Ended up taking about 30 hours in total. So I'm a little bit worn out. Rather than jump into cash and grind out another session and I have decided to play a tournament. I play low dollar, $5, $10, maybe as high as $20 sit and goes, occasionally some multi-table stuff. I'm not an expert at sit and goes by any manner of means. I do pretty well. I do have a positive ROI, but I'm not, world class sit and go player. I'm a much stronger cash game hold'em player, obviously, than this. So this is a $5 six max game. It's a double up turbo, basically, so it's going to go pretty quick. We open sevens under the gun on a very dry board. That's a bet. So sit and go strategy kind of depends upon the style and the type of tournament that you're playing in. If I'm in a big multi-table tournament, the goal is to win it. The goal is to make the final table, not make the money, but make the final table. And so I am usually relatively cautious in the early stages of a big multi-table. And as the blinds start going up and we start approaching the bubble, I will play much more aggressively and attack the bubble with the goal of chipping up and building a pretty big chip stack so that I can make a run for the final table. Because that's where the money is. In multi-table tournaments, payout structure is non-linear. It's kind of exponential. It's, you can make, for a $5 multi-table, or call it a $50 multi-table or a $100 multi-table, you can make back, some small fraction if you just make the money, but the real money starts to ramp up at the final table, and obviously the bulk of the money is in first and second place. So when you're playing a multi-table tournament, that's your goal, is to make the final table and then win it outright. When you're playing a classical sit and go game, say a full ring sit and go, nine-handed game, the payout structure is usually 50% of the prize pool goes to the first place, 30% to second, and 20% to third place. And a long time ago, many years ago, I did the math. I worked out the expected value of a number of different scenarios, and then confirmed it with a math buddy of mine. And what the conclusion of that is that in a full ring nine-handed sit and go table, that your goal should just be to make the money. Whatever it takes to squeeze into the money is what you should do. And if that means folding aces at the later in the tournament, then that's what you should do. So we open the ace deuce here in late position. I'm going to take a single stab at it. Kind of a wet board, so we're not going to get married to this. So this particular sit and go that I'm playing here, again, I'm a little bit jet lagged from my trip. This is more just sort of a let's have some fun kind of a thing. Play a $5 sit and go. So that's why it's such a low buy-in. This one is a double up turbo, which means that the top two seats. If I bring up the tournament lobby, let's bring up this guy. You can see, I'm sorry, I should have said the top 3 seats. So it's a $5.25 buy-in, which you can see right here. 25 cents goes to the rake. So $5 times 6 puts $30 in the prize pool, and the top 3 finishers each get $10. So this is the epitome of a just make the money kind of a thing. Here you're doing whatever you can to squeak into the money. I like to, personally, I like to put a little bit of pressure on the other players throughout the game, especially as we're getting near the bubble, because a lot of people start tightening up quite a bit. But I am also, and that's in the same breath of saying that, I'm pretty cautious and will lay down some pretty big hands because I want to make the money, and that's what that's what you should be doing too. So, so 3 of these players are not going to make anything, and the other 3 are each going to get $10 back. So not the world's biggest payday, but kind of fun otherwise. The other thing to note is that it's a turbo, and what that means is that the blinds go up faster than they do in a regular tournament. And so you have to be a little more active than you would be in a normal tournament, where you get to see more hands and you can wait for better spots. Here you really have to speed it up. This isn't a hyper turbo or anything like that where you're really gambling quickly, but here the blinds go up pretty quickly. And so we're going to play a fair number of hands in late position, and put some pressure on our opponents, because they're thinking similarly to us. Most likely, they understand that it's the flattest of payout structures, and making the money is the whole goal. Just squeaking in is fine. So you can pressure these players. A lot of times you'll see 2 players when you get down to 4 players or so, and 2 of them are moderately short stacked. You can just abuse the heck out of them because they're just trying to outlast each other. And so the strategy in sit and go play is, it looks like Hold'em, smells like Hold'em, but it's a turbo tournament with a very different kind of payout. So here we're going to raise the 9/8 suited in late position, just keep pressure on other players, and just keep. In that case, we're going to be out of position, but here we're just going to raise our button almost every single time, unless there's a really good reason not to. Say one of these players just starts to really get pissed off and play back at us. Very dry board, very easy to c-bet this, and take down the pot. So again, if you stuck around, you came back over the top, or just called there, clearly we're just shutting it down and going away. But what we want to do is build up a little bit of a stack here if we can, and so that we can make that money, this flat payout structure. So as I said, I'm in Europe here for 10 days, worn out. My body doesn't know if it's day or night. According to the clock, and I was going to say the sun outside, but there's no sun in Germany at this time of the year. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which means it's like 8 in the morning back in my home in Arizona. So I slept a little bit on the plane. I got a new neck pillow, which is exciting stuff, right? It's why you tuned in to watch this poker video. But I'm sort of a connoisseur of neck pillows on airplanes, and never had really a very good one. I really need them because I get neck pain sleeping in airplane seats. And I got a new one, a Cabot Evolution pillow, which is just this big old memory foam thing, and you look ridiculous in it, but I was able to sleep. I slept for probably 3.5, 4 hours straight on the plane at one point, so that was a win for me. Anyway, travel woes. Business travel sucks, bottom line. I do not advocate it, and it's one of the things I'm really looking forward to when I eventually get to retire, is never having to go on another business trip, because it's one of the worst parts of my job. So back on the poker front, you'll notice we're using a 4-color deck. Clubs are green and diamonds are blue. Okay, so we've got a limp in late position, which is real weakness. I'm going to raise the king jack here and just try to get these guys to fold. If they come along, or in this case I get re-raised, I am done with the hand. It's an easy fold, but that limp is so weak, and you saw how quickly he folded. He just wants to see a flop there. He's a bad player. He just wants to see a flop, trying to make a hand, and that's not how you win at poker. In the long run, you're making hands is great, and getting paid off with your monsters is fantastic, but there's a lot more to poker than that. That's what this guy, he's clearly we're at a $5 table, so I'm not expecting the world's greatest players. So you put yourself in his head. What is he doing there? A limp, bad players, their bet sizes mean what they've got, for lack of a better way of saying that. So a check means they're weak and they don't have anything for the most part. A raise means they like their hand. Maybe it's not strong, but they think it's strong, and you got to put yourself in their shoes and try to understand what they think means strength and that sort of thing. So this guy on our left looks like he's going to give us a little bit of trouble. Unfortunately, he's got position on us. He's the guy that re-raised us. Here he's raising position, raising the button. If he folds here, I'm more inclined to believe he's pretty good if he shoves all in. We've seen him active a few times here, so we've got to watch him pretty closely. He's got to fold here unless he's got an overpair to the board. And this guy, had something, ace king, king queen, something like that. He missed that board probably. And showing his cards there is dumb. It's a dumb move. Yeah, okay, we're in a turbo, so the game's going quickly, and maybe you won't pay as big a penalty for giving away information on yourself that way. But in general, showing your cards anytime is a bad play, and I don't recommend it. Regardless of why you're trying to, why you're showing them. This was a leak I had. I think I've talked about this in the past. I used to have a leak that I showed my hands when I didn't have to. Trying to mislead my opponents, trying to get them to believe something about how I play that was different than I was really playing. And long story short, a good poker buddy of mine, Mr. Multi, that I've blogged about in the past, good friend of mine, very good multi-table tournament player, took me aside one day and said, "Mark, you're an idiot. Stop doing that," and kind of walked me through why it was a bad idea. And ever since, I've stopped showing, and it just makes my life a lot easier, and it keeps my opponents guessing about what I have. And anytime your opponents are unsure of the kind of cards you're playing, that's a good thing. There is the benefit that you get from showing your hand, whether you win with it and don't have to show, everybody else folds, or you bluff with it. Whether it was a winning hand or a losing hand, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't matter. The reason that you're showing it is usually doing more harm than good, because it's showing. A good player is going to be able to kind of work his way back through the hand and figure out, okay, so he plays his bluffs this way, and he plays his stronger hands that way, or he plays, small pairs this other way, and they'll be able to figure out what you've got. Anytime you give your opponent information, it's a bad thing. Poker is a game of incomplete information. He should have been betting there. He should have been trying to extract some value from us when we checked the final time. I'm going to call here. This is kind of a little bit loose of a call. We got to watch this guy coming over the top at us, in which case we'll just fold. But yeah. So we're done with this hand. That's kind of common there. And again, I just finished saying that he's a reasonably tough player. He's aggressive, and he's putting lots of pressure on us. So could have predicted he was going to squeeze there. If you know, I'm going to credit it to jet lag. So, and then what do we do here? You know, we'd flop top pair. How are we going to play this hand? It'd be interesting to see what he turns over. This guy's thinking about it. I think he's going to end up folding the 5-seat. And he doesn't show either, which is a good thing. I think this is a good player here on our left. And unfortunately, he's got position on us, so he's going to make our life tough. But it's not going to stop us from trying to steal in late position. We're just going to be a little bit more cautious, and we're going to give him, kind of paradoxically, we're going to give him less credit when he comes back over the top of us. And so we'll be more likely to get it in with top pair or weak kicker here. So there's some flush draws that we do block a little bit here. It's a little bit straights and things like that. So we're going to go ahead and fire. We're going to charge this guy to see another card. Okay, so what are we going to do here? I think he's got a draw, and I think we're going to get the money in. If he turns over a set of 6s here, or a pair of 5s, yeah, he's on a draw. So, and now he's picked up some other outs. So that felt like a semi-bluff. Usually when people have a big made hand, they wait till a turn to get it in. That's another kind of not an ironclad rule, but it's a pretty common one. Chance of him being on a draw there was pretty big. When they re-raise you on the flop itself, I tend to think draws, especially at the low stakes here, where the players are less creative than, or less tricky in a good way. They're tricky. They're trying to be tricky there. But they're not. And he's out of the tournament, and we're that much closer to making the money. Folding there wouldn't have been horrible, and might have been the right play, actually. And in fact, I think it's the right play for you if you're not good at picking up things like, the majority of the time that's going to be a draw, so I get the money in. If you're not hand reading well at that kind of level yet, folding and making the money, just trying to get into the money, is the right play. But I've seen so many hands of poker, and there's just so many of those kind of things ingrained in me that just really sniffed and smelled like a draw. And now that we've got a decent-sized stack, there's two schools of thought here, and I'm not entirely sure which is the right one, and I've convinced myself both ways. On the one hand, because this is a double-up turbo, the idea is just take the hill. We could just sit back now and let Yen do nothing and let the other players just kind of fight it out amongst themselves and squeak into the money. And $10 in third place is just as good as $10 in first place in these tournaments. The issue with that, though, is that it's a turbo. So the blinds are going to start going up, and our $3,000 stack is going to start becoming worth less and less more quickly. So that's the issue with that. I tend to favor the other approach, and that is, I've got a big stack now. I've got two players here, one at 1,700 chips and one at 1,600 chips, that they're not desperate yet, but they're going to start feeling that way. And so I can start attacking them, in situations where the one seat folds to us. I can put pressure on these two guys, and they're going to try to outlast each other, because remember, only 3 of us get paid. So one of these guys is going home, hopefully not us. And so putting pressure on them is relatively high EV, expected value, to do, because they're trying to outlast each other, and they're going to be like, no, I'm going to let the other guy fight this big stack and bust out. So I tend to, all forms of poker, whether it's pot limit Omaha or no limit cash or limit poker or tournaments, whatever, I tend to err on the side of aggression and keeping pressure on my opponents and keeping them on the defensive and making the hard decisions, putting them to the test, if you will. And when you've got a big stack in a tournament, when the other player's tournament lives are at stake, that's a good time to keep pressure on them. So we got a suited connector in the big blind here, and we got the walk, which is great. We just don't want to tangle with this big stack. We want to avoid confrontations with him because he's the guy that can really hurt us. I'm going to raise the ace-8, and again, I'm putting pressure on this guy because he keeps watching this guy. If he's smart, it's a fold unless he's got a stronger hand now. He knows we can put him out of the tournament relatively easily. So we're going to keep the pressure on this guy, even though we've said that he's a good player. He's good enough to know that. We're going to use that to our advantage, in other words. He's good enough to know that his job is to make the money and that his main competition is the 6th seat. That's the guy that he's really got to watch from doubling up on him, through him. And he's got to outlast him. And so we're going to keep the pressure on this guy. The fact that he's limping now, I'm rethinking a little bit about his, he's open limping. So he's nervous, is what that feels like to me. And he just wants to see a flop now, which is making me rethink, just how good he is. Again, we're at the $5 table, so none of these players are, I'm not playing against Daniel Negreanu here, Phil Ivey. These are, so he limped King Jack off, which is kind of interesting to keep in mind. But for these stakes, I think he's not a bad player. And we're going to use that to our advantage. He's got position on us, but we're going to use that to our advantage to keep pressure on him. And you see how quickly the blinds are going up now. So this guy's well under 10 big blinds. This guy's approaching 10 big blinds. He's got 12 or 13 big blinds, whatever that is. We've got barely 20 big blinds. And this guy, the number 1 seat, is very content just to give us walks and coast into the money, which is great. We love it. Keep giving us a walk. I'm going to let the queen deuce go here. That's just a little bit too weak of a hand. And this guy, he's starting maybe to get a little cockier, the 2 seat, because the 6 seat is now under 1,000 chips. And maybe he feels, and he's getting closer in size to the 1 seat, so maybe he's feeling less endangered. So that was interesting. And, we made the money, so this is fantastic. That's a queen hits there. So good game, guys, and that's how you do a easy game. That's how you win a double up turbo on Ignition. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I'd like to know if you enjoy these as well. Again, I'm kind of new to the I gotta hit the no button here. Kind of new to the still a little bit new to creating these videos, so kind of feeling my way out what's resonating with you folks. Most of the readers of my blog are beginning and intermediate players and playing at the small stakes and below. So I'm assuming that $5 and $10 sit and goes are kind of in your wheelhouse, and that you can benefit from this. So thanks for joining us. This was a fun little session. I'm going to go try to find some Wiener Schnitzel or something, or Spanish food down in the hotel lobby. So I don't know. Good talking to you. Good seeing you again. Drop me a line, drop me a comment, and catch you next time. Bye-bye.